Hi, welcome to QuickPose AI and building a squat counter in iOS. You can see me performing a squat here on the right, and that's roughly the application we'll be building today. If you're looking for a more introductory video, please check out our other videos as they'll help you getting started and checking out the simpler demo apps. In preparation for today, I've already downloaded a sample app from Apple. This is the default when you create a new project, and I've installed a QuickPose iOS SDK already. To sort of zoom out a bit of the development process, I suggest whenever working with video streams, don't use the camera to develop a sort of fitness or a health application, because you'll put so much strain on your body and it will take a long time to develop. So I suggest making videos of all the sort of specific cases you need. This is what I'm going to show you here when I bring in this video called Squats Pete. This is me doing some squats. This is like what I'd call a happy path, in that this is the basic use case. There'll be lots of other videos that I'd expect for pushing this to production, which would involve more edge cases, what happens when the user's distracted, all these sorts of scenarios. But for now, we're just going to focus on the happy path. For the eager-eyed of you, you may notice I have a slight injury on this knee, and I overcompensate by kind of leaning backwards a bit. So my squat is a little bit unbalanced, and we can use this to create a really meaningful user feedback prompt. So we'll sort of go back to that in a bit more detail later on in the video. So to zoom out, I suggest recording a bunch of videos to make your life a bit easier. How QuickPose works is we take in an image from a video feed, we do some processing, and we spit out an overlay image. This is just highlighting certain areas of the camera image below. We don't actually touch the camera image for performance reasons. So with that in mind, I'm just going to start doing some basic boilerplate to get QuickPose going. So I'm using SwiftUI. We'll do some other examples with UIKit, but SwiftUI is the easiest by far to work with. This is the boilerplate which comes with Xcode. What I would suggest is just completely removing this for now, as we've got quite a complicated view we'll be building, and we don't need to worry too much about having this as our home page. In other videos, I kind of talk about how you would load the camera view from a say menu bar or like an action button, but in this scenario, this is one screen in the app. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is bring in a simulated camera. So we're not going to use the real camera, and because I'm running this on my Mac, I want to just use a simulated camera. And this is one of our QuickPose helper classes, which is in the SwiftUI module. You don't have to use this, but I can strongly recommend it just because we've done a load of boilerplate for you and memory tested it as well. So the QuickPose camera view takes in a video and it spits out those images to our QuickPose delegate. So I'm going to have to pull a few things together. I'm going to bring in the Squats Pete video. So this says from my bundle, pull in Squats Pete, and Marv, if your video is not working, make sure you've used the right ending and your video is included in the target membership here. Right, okay, so now we need to hook up an instance of QuickPose. I'm just going to bring in our standard QuickPose here. This is our demo apps bundle ID. You'll need to register on our dev portal to get your own SDK key. Okay, so we've got a camera view here. I'm going to run this and see what happens. Cool, okay, so we've got me squatting, great, very exciting. Some people might be happy with this app by itself, but I aspire to more. I'm going to bring in a second class from our SwiftUI module, which shows the overlay image on the screen itself. This takes an overlay image from the QuickPose SDK, and this is a UI image type. So you can have a sneak peek, you can save it, you can do what you want with it. We try and expose as much as we can to the users so they can make configurable changes. So this is our UI image, or it needs to be optional. Okay, so we have our two views. We've not stacked them yet, so I'm going to stack the camera behind the overlay. I suggest doing this because otherwise the camera view and the overlay view won't be overlapping, and so the markings we add to the image will be maligned. And then the other thing we need to do here is instantiate QuickPose. So we've got that call there, but I'm going to also call start, and I'm going to put a feature into it. So I'm just going to do show points for now. This is the easiest one. And then I'm going to mostly ignore what we get back in the on-frame callback. So this is output on every frame. I will label up output image though. We're going to use that. Let's have a look. So I'm going to save the overlay image from the output frame, and it's called output image. Perfect, cool, right. So once I run this, we should have our overlay view rendered on top of the candle view. Okay, yeah, that is looking pretty good. It's not quite a squat counter yet. This is our raw data coming out of the lower level frameworks. What I'm going to do is just swap this in to be our fitness counter. We're going to talk about the style options later on, but for now we're just going to choose fitness squat counter. Okay, so it's defaulted to the body overlay. What we have here is sort of an overlay, but we don't have a count. And this is where the results returned on frame are helpful. So if we go into here, we should be able to pull out the features we want. This is a dictionary. So if I do if let fitness result, actually that's fine, result, and this takes the feature in as a key. So fitness is the squat counter, and out of it we get our fitness result. So I'm just going to print that value for now. String value, cool. Okay, so we have our string value being returned here, which isn't actually that informative, it just says squat the whole time. What I will do is also show you the value itself. So we've got here our probability of whether or not that is squat. And as you can see, when I duck down, it kind of pulses up to like 0.8. And when I'm stood up, it gets closer to 0. So what we do is we kind of give you visibility of the kind of raw data coming out from the image, so you can manipulate it yourself. What I suggest here, however, is you use one of our provided classes, which is a threshold counter. So the threshold counter basically says if it's beyond 6, say it's a squat. If it's below 0.3, say it's not a squat. And you kind of need the squat, not squat sort of shift for it to count as a squat. You can't just duck down and stay down. That doesn't increase the amount of squats you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to paste in our squat counter. That is available inside the core. And now I'm going to add this down here. This has a count here, and then we pass in the probability to it. Well, let's see what happens when I run this. I'm expecting squat counter to have a get state. Let's Let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, so we've got pose entered and pose complete and a number which is counting. This is the internal state, so I'm not so interested in that. What I am interested in though is changing the UI only when the state changes. And for that, we've got a callback on the counting function to basically provide that insight. So it's status in. So I can say here, if case let, because it is an enum value, pose complete, and I'm going to extract the count feature. I'm going to say squat count status. So if the pose is complete, then just return the squat count to the log. So we're basically stripping out all the raw information there and just returning something a little bit more useful. There we go. So every time the pose returns as complete, it bounces up the number. Now you can change the thresholds here. So if I make the exit threshold or the enter threshold a lot harder, so it's currently 0.6. If I made that 0.9, I don't remember seeing a 0.9 on the display. The squats will be a lot harder to achieve. Okay, so we're not seeing any squats count. If you are getting anomalous data, then this is a good place to look, check your thresholds. So I'm going to remove that for now. I think we're in a sort of place where the squat counting would be useful to show to the user. Already we're mostly there in terms of the core functionality. We've got a squat identified and we've got a count kind of reduced to quite easy to display format. Okay, so I like using overlays, so I'm going to use a overlay here. A new overlay needs to be there. You can just keep stacking things on the Z stack. What I like about using overlays is it keeps the responsibility of the Z stack just on the camera, and you can also specify alignment. So I'm going to specify the alignment of the squat counter to the top. Cool, okay. So I need to pass the squat count from here to here, so I'm going to do that with a state variable. And it's going to be an optional int, otherwise it could be displaying it all the time. Okay, count. If I have a count, let me just hook it up here first. So it's got count. I'm going to put this in a text. Count, and I'm just going to say squats. If this was a production app, I would pluralize that properly, but for now, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to make it nice and visible, so it's going to be color white, and the font will be a huge system size. A system size of 32. Right, let's try that. I'll also drop it from the top, 100 points. Boom, there we go, cool. 1 squat, 2 squats. Okay, this is good, I'm liking this. So I kind of want to show you a bit more of kind of realistic production app. So if you showed this to, say, your designer, they might worry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few more UI polishes, and that actually puts a bit more of a challenge on the integration. So we look into a few more features. So I think the first thing I want to do is probably add a scale effect, so that when a new squat is counted, it's a bit more visible to the user, because it's quite hard to see that when you've actually done a squat, except obviously doing the squat itself. Okay, so what we have here is a scale effect, and its default value is 1, and what we want is when a squat is counted, only when it's counted, for that scale effect to momentarily jump up to 2. And then after some time, we'll drop it back down. So there's a horrible bit of syntax here, which is loading an asynchronous call after a ½ second deadline. We're going to drop that down to 1 again. So 1 is the default, don't forget. And to make it a little bit prettier, we're going to use an animation. We're going to use an ease in, ease out, so it's got a nice effect. And it's quite a quick animation, so it's like a pulse. And that pulses up to scale 2. And then on the way back down, we'll make it a bit slower. I mean, all these numbers are quite arbitrary, so you've got to sort of play it by eye a bit. So let's see how these go. Right, here we go. Oh, perfect. We've got a nice bounce there on the counts. Okay, so we've got a little bit more UI polish. I did promise we would look into my knees. So don't forget, fitness is only one of the features. The other feature we make very easy to use is a range of motion counter. So I'm going to just pull out the fitness counter, the squat counter, and that will be squat counter feature. I'm just going to pull that in there. So what we need is a features array to pass in, so you can just keep stacking more and more features. Right, there we go. This probably needs a type, so I'll call it QuickPose.feature. Right, let's try that. So we should be where we started, and now I'm going to add some range of motions. Left knee ROM, and that is going to measure my range of motion on my knee. And my side is going to be my left, and I'm going to make that a clockwise measurement. So the clockwise and the anti-clockwise is our currently best way of specifying which way you want the angle to measure. We'll be coming up with a few of these, so you've got more flexibility in future. Okay, so I'm going to add those. And I want the other side to be my right knee, and I want the clockwise direction to be false. Cool, okay, wow. So we've got the right location, but it's pretty intense. This measurement is helpful if it's only one measurement on your body, where here we've got 2 overlapping. So what I'm going to suggest is we use a style to shrink down the size of the font size and the lines. So I'm going to call this small style, and it's a QuickPose style. So there's a bunch of things in here. I think what I recommend is you kind of set them roughly to the same level. So we've got relative font size, arc size, and line width. The arc size is how big this radius here is, and they're all relative to the default of 1. So these are all getting smaller. And you override the style like this. On the other videos we talk about specifying conditional styles, so I'm going to give you an example of that shortly. Okay, it's worked too well. The font is now quite hard to read on the bottom, but I also like how it doesn't overlap each other too much. So I might just leave those font sizes as they are. Cool. Okay, we have a squat counter, and we've got a range of motion here on the knees. We're not really unlocking the power of the range of motion. I think we can add more user feedback quite easily here. So I know as a patient that my knees aren't quite as working as well as they should be. And I'm just going to sort of highlight a kind of conditional color. So what I want to say is whenever a sort of my joint gets to a certain range, that is a good range to hit. So I'm not a physio, but I'm assuming from my range here, maybe the range of 140 would be quite a good thing to highlight. So again, this is just sort of example numbers. If you're working in this space, you would have more information. So I'm getting my sort of green highlights there. Oh, and I note the end 2 squats. You see that I don't get a highlight on my left knee, I get a highlight on my right knee. Now I guess that surprises me because I know I've got an injury in my right knee, but it looks like I'm sort of overcompensating by doing a sort of larger dip. This is something we can report back to the user. So we've got this sort of green highlight here showing that they've got into the right pose, but can we do anything more? And this is where we kind of want to not count the squat if both sort of knees aren't green. So both knees need to go down to 140 degrees. And what I suggest doing is qualifying the squat count so that an extra criteria needs to be reached. I'm going to put in another squat counter which is a little bit more precise. I'm going to call it my left knee squat counter. Okay, so my left knee squat counter will take the same probability, but I'm also going to give it I'm going to weight that probability by the range of motion. So the range of motion I'm going to get out of this results dictionary, and I'm going to call it left knee range of motion. Result equals result, and then I can just pass in my feature from before, left knee ROM result. Great, okay. So I'm getting this in and I'm not using it yet, but what I want to say is if the knee ROM result gets to less than 140, use the value, otherwise don't. So that's basically saying my knee needs to hit 140. If it doesn't get any higher than 140, it will stay at 0, which means the squat counter will see I'm just standing the whole time. And this allows you to kind of in unison say, oh, I'm at the bottom of my squats, but I've not actually got my knee squat all the way down. So I'm going to then add an extra bit of logic inside here, which will say, if my knee squat counter does not equal my squat count, then there's a problem. So I don't see the word problem. Don't see the word problem. Oh, I see the word problem. So I get 2 problems there. And you'll see it kind of carries on printing problems even though I've got knees working the next part of the video. And that's because we're not resetting the count. So what I would say is the left knee squat counter is the valid count. So let's use that count to reset the squat counter's count. I'm basically saying whenever there's a problem, ignore what the squat count said, and we probably don't want to highlight or return the squat count anyway. So if there's a problem, it's going to print the word problem for now and not count the squat. Let's see how this looks. So fine, 1 squat, great. 2 squats, great. So these are the problem ones. Ooh, so we don't see the count increase, and then we see the count increase again when we reset. Brilliant. So we kind of want to highlight this to the user now. So there's a few things we can do. I think sort of the basic thing we can do is add an extra bit of feedback as another overlay. So I'll just quickly copy and paste one of those. Let's have this coming up from the bottom. I'm going to create a state called feedback. Nope. string. There we go. Same as before, super big. We're going to take off the scale effects, that might be quite annoying. And then when we get to here, we're just going to print the word problem for now. Like I said, I'm not a physio, this is about as detailed as I go. Problem, perfect. Right, okay. So we want the problem text to disappear when we have a valid squat. I'm gonna do something a bit more complicated than you'd expect. You'd probably be expecting me to put it in this area here. But this area is only triggered on the next pose complete, as in when the dude in the video stands up again, we call all this. Whereas I want to show it when I enter the next pose. So you see it would be nice for it to disappear now, because the problem will hang around until the whole thing's complete again. So let's do that. And that else is on here. This is a good opportunity for a switch statement, I am aware. Right, problem's there, and the problem goes, so when you do the next squat, the problems that hang around for too long. Problem, right, okay. So we can probably give a bit more specific feedback. I know it's my left knee. Left knee is not lowered enough. Might be easy to say left side, a bit more user friendly. Now there's a bit of a general problem with kind of left and right in sort of usability. I would say it's a bit of a big ask for the user to work out which side is their left and right, particularly because this video is mirrored, say, on a selfie camera, or potentially not mirrored if you're using the rear camera. So what I like to do is put highlights on the video itself. Now, this kind of exploits one of our key architectural decisions around separating out the camera feed coming in from QuickPose. So any features you can just swap in and out, and then they're immediately applied to the next frame. So we've got a bunch of features here which are styled with small style. Let's make a red style. Right, I'm going to copy this. That's very helpful. Red style. I'm going to leave the conditional color separately, because we don't need that now, but I am going to color it all UI color red. So then we want the red style. So, okay, so we've got the squat counter. When it's lowered, I want to update QuickPose with a new feature set. And that feature set is the same array as what we've got before, but I want my left knee ROM to be restyled. And I want to restyle it with red. Let's give that a go. So basically when a pose is complete, then the red style is applied. Now, it would be cool if we could apply it halfway down, but we don't really know when that is. Okay, so we've got a problem here where the red style's sticking around. So what I would suggest, like before, is you reset the style when entering the next pose. So QuickPose.update, and then I'm just going to reset this back to the original array of features. Reset color. It's a good little comment here because it's not entirely obvious what that achieves. Okay, so we've got green, happy with that, green, and then red, left side's not lowered, is lowered enough. Oh, is not, change that to low enough. Okay, so a few text tweaks aside, I think we've got quite a useful squat counter here. Talking about making this more realistic for production, you'd probably provide a sort of right knee version of this as well, and maybe if both knees didn't go low enough, you can easily create a horizontal inverse of this video. So I've got squats Pete. I could maybe label this squats Pete left leg not low enough, and then I could horizontally flip the video to create a squats Pete right leg not low enough. So then I can test that and have a few more scenarios there. Obviously 140 is an arbitrary amount, and you can perhaps provide a questionnaire in advance to work out what would be a good range of motion to sort of target. I'm aware that there's different sources on the internet for the range of motions for different heights and ages. So that's kind of all I wanted to show you today. It's pretty advanced use case, I'd say, and we put quite a lot of user polish on. So thanks for watching.